Quark got a tympanic tickle from an amateur. Unlike Jadzia, Ezri Dax is left-handed, and for some reason, sewing seems to calm Garrick down. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Today, we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 3, After Image, written by Renee Echevarria, directed by Cirroc's favorite Les Landau. This is October 14th, 1998. We have a very special guest with us. Nicole de Boer is here, everybody.
Hello. Yay. Hi, guys.
All right. And my name is Ryan T. Husk. Everybody, especially listening only, please forgive the raspiness in my voice. I'm just practicing to try to sound like Clint Eastwood or something in the future. How's everybody doing?
Very sexy.
Cirroc, your eyes rolled so hard right there. That was great.
Okay. I don't know if you can pull that off.
No.
But actually, that reminded me of something that Na said to me one time. She said something about a John Wayne quote teaching about acting. And the thing she said was, talk low and walk slow.
Oh,
I think that was it. Yeah. And so that was John Wayne's advice for actors, to talk low,
yeah,
and walk slow.
Okay, I'll try that. I don't know how well that'll work, but I'll give it a try.
Not you, but for the I guess for the Cowboys up there.
Not for me. Oh, okay,
Cowboys.
Good. I thought maybe it wouldn't work that well.
Yeah, but John Wayne had really small feet. It
Talk
looked
slow and walk low.
It looked like it was like a balancing act with him.
He just dismounted a horse, so he walked really weird. He had
Yeah, exactly. You ride a horse all day. It'll happen.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
So everybody at home, you remember episode 3 here. This is kind of the big Ezri Dax episode in a lot of ways. Episode 1 was just Ezri Dax being introduced for the first time. Episode 2 was her being incorporated into the Siskos and their shenanigans. And now episode 3 is basically how Ezri Dax is going to affect everybody in the station, what her role is going to be, what the relationships are, and establishing all of that. And I just feel like that was just such a fun thing for the writers to hash out, is how does this new character interact with this person and this person and this person, how she interact with, Starfleet as a whole. Actually, can we start with this real quick, Nikki? Our associate producer, Eve England, said that in the Deep Space Nine companion on page 200, and I don't really know what page it was, but she said that you got like a black eye on the first day of shooting and they had to cover it up with makeup, but I didn't see it. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, on the first day of shooting, I had it for our photo shoots. All of our official photos, the ones that I sign at conventions, all those photos, I had a black eye for that. And yeah, my agent really wanted to switch the day we were getting our photos done, but they were like, we can't, because we're flying this guy in from New York. We can't change the day. Don't worry, we'll cover it up with makeup. Because I'd hung out with some friends the weekend prior. And I think I said I fell off a bicycle because I didn't want anybody getting in trouble. I was hanging out with some friends, some actor friends, and someone had me up on their shoulder and they dropped me on the concrete on the balcony. And I heard my neck crack and I thought, what? And then I had a big shiner and I was freaking out because I had this brand new TV show that I was doing.
I know, I kind of need my face.
Yeah, I was not happy with him.
That's why does that happen at these kinds of moments for actors? It's so crazy. It's always,
it went from joy, he had a TV show, new TV show. I had a TV show. We were all celebrating, with other friends and woohoo, drinking. And it went from pure joy 1 second to the next. I'm screwed, Yeah. But they
these
covered
kinds
it up.
of moments always happen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna after DS9 ended, I did a basketball show. It was in Toronto. That was when I
Hoop
got
Life.
to live in Toronto. Hoop Live.
Hoop Life.
Yeah. And so here it is. I just booked this show. I'm so excited. Same like you. I'm like, oh my God, I just booked this Showtime show. I'm going to be, doing this basketball show. I love basketball. So I go celebrate. I'm going to play basketball to celebrate and work on my game and get better and just celebrate. And then I twist my ankle so bad that I was on crutches for like a month.
Oh,
I showed up
You
to the
twisted your
set on
ankle.
crutches. Yeah. I showed up to the
That's worse.
set on
Okay,
crutches.
that beats mine. That is really bad. It's a basketball show.
It's a basketball show and you're injured.
Oh my God.
And it's always at the moment when you're like so on top of the mountain, so
That's right.
celebrating, like, so that's why for people out there listening, it's good to just keep a nice, even kind of demeanor, even when you're in your highs.
Right.
Because
right.
sometimes over celebrating or just being too enthusiastic about the high can cause a low.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are cautionary tales, people.
Yeah.
And it's hard when you're young, you're young and you want to be happy and excited about something, but you're absolutely right.
I thought we were all still young.
Oh, a younger, like really young,
like babies.
Teenager, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this episode was about really kind of like, DS9 has been doing this thing now where they open the show with a two-parter, a three-parter, a two-parter. Pretty much every beginning of the season, they'll start off with a 2 or 3-parter. And I feel like this is the third part of the 7th season, right? This feels like a trilogy almost for Ezri Dax.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that how they kind of pitched it to you in the beginning, or is this just like
they didn't tell me anything? Cirroc, are you kidding? No.
So did you see any of these lines or any of these material beforehand, like when you were auditioning, or did you just have the first episode that you did when you were auditioning?
Yeah, the only thing I auditioned with was the scene with Quark where I'm sitting with him at the bar. And I'm like, don't get me any more confused. Is that in this episode or the one prior? I think it's this one.
Yeah, that's in this episode. Yeah.
So it was that scene with Quark at the bar.
Yeah. So that means they already had this.
So that was cool.
Arc rolled out. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
This was your first time working with most of the cast besides the glorious Siskos. Was there anybody that kind of jumped out at you when you were doing like one-on-one things, whether it was with Andy or whether it was with Dorn or whomever, or Julian, Sid? Was there anybody that kind of jumped out where you're like, you know what? I really like working with this person. This one makes it really easy.
Everybody, because they were such professionals and such great actors, it was all kind of easy. Oh, I did want to say, Cirroc, when I did the last one with you, I was going off of memory, but then I came to watch this one and I watched the one prior. And when you and I are doing little Ractigino scene, I did laugh out loud the way you looked at me and say, "You're a counselor?" Just like, I laughed out loud because you did that so well. And you're just so darn cute. You are so cute.
That was a special moment with us. I love that.
Yeah, no, you were like, so what? Funny. And so I was like, oh, I didn't say that when we were talking. But that was really great the way you delivered that. I just was having fun already, with Cirroc. And like I say, every Brooks was amazing. I mean, as far as like real going out of the way to be friendly, I would say Armin Shimmerman, really went out of the way to say, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything. You can always come to me. And so that was really nice, But I felt pretty good with everybody. The one bummer, the whole thing, I really never got to work with Renee very much, Renee Aubergenois. And because he had that makeup, which was just must have been so miserable. And I know he's miserable.
Yeah.
I mean, I could never do it. I could never do it. So when I did work with him, he just seemed like his character, because he was in character usually, and gruff and grumpy, and I just didn't really get to know him very well. And then once I started doing the conventions later, I adored him. I mean, I was just like, I didn't know how friendly and lovely and great you were. So yeah, I didn't really get a good connection with him. But everybody else, I felt like pretty much, but I felt really comfortable with Cirroc.
Yeah, I noticed at the end, I was like, she's cute. And my dad's like, she's 300 years older than 200 for you.
That was cute.
But this episode dealt with a lot, mostly with mental health. And I thought that this was a very good episode to kind of delve into that. Both your mental health and Garrick's mental health are kind of dissected in this episode. And I think it's beautiful that DS9 touches so much on this issue, because they really try to work out how people can deal with problems and issues in their lives and examine it and reflect on it and kind of be aware of it. I think that's one of the things that I took away from watching you in this episode.
I would say that because of this episode, really, this is where I really got a lot of letters from fans, from, generally young fans. Also, this started even getting letters from transgender youth and stuff, like people who were going through stuff. And I think that from watching Ezri in this episode and really seeing, first you go, okay, this isn't Jadzia, she had her shit together and all that. But now you're like, wait a minute, look how hard this is for this character. She's really trying to find herself. She's not sure who she is. And she wants to bail. Like, this is scary stuff. She's been thrown in to go and work with Garrick and stuff. And she's just like seeing Worf. He doesn't want to talk to me. He hates me. I don't think I'm cut out for this. To having someone say, you're not cut out for this, and it's just like, I want to run away. I absolutely, when you really in life just kind of want to run away and you're doubting yourself. And we all can know that feeling, to different degrees. And so to watch this character go through that, and then to find out that it's okay, to not know what's going on. And it's great to have support systems. And like I have, Sisko being there for me and friends there for you. And then to find out that I was able to help this person, even with being vulnerable. And in fact, it's because I was being vulnerable with my own issues that I was able to help this other person. And so I think that those are really important messages, that the writers had there. And it's really why I ended up having so many fans saying that Ezri Dax, that character, was so special for them and really helped them a lot.
It was a really, sorry, I was just going to say that was a really interesting approach that the writers had for you, which is you were working out your own issues at the same time as Garrick's, and that really gets people off their defenses. You know what I mean? Like if you came in and said, this is your problem, this is what you need to do. A character like Garrick would say something extremely intelligent, but basically saying, off, And but the fact that you came in and you're like talking about your own problems, it makes you seem a lot more harmless, and
I have to say I wasn't sure how to play it necessarily, because it did sort of make me think of like Columbo,
Oh boy, Cirroc loves Columbo. You hit the right name there.
You just said the right name.
Really?
One more just one more question.
It's just a whatever, or just that playing dumb or playing whatever to so I was like, is she doing that? No, I don't think she's really that savvy in this moment, because her head's just too messed up, and I was like, well, maybe some moments she is, but some moments she's not. So I really remember like thinking about that for the Garrick scenes. But then I decided that I really liked that. I mean, I would love to make her so smart and savvy that she was playing dumb to, get Garrick to understand. But I was like, no, she's just not there, So, and it would help my arc if I start from this place of, total confusion. So that's why I ended up playing it. Yeah.
Nicole, when I was watching this, I felt, because Ryan always says that there's this thing called the O'Brien must suffer episode.
Oh yeah, that is well known in Star Trek lore. That every season there must be at least one O'Brien must suffer episode. Yeah,
right. So O'Brien always gets some kind of torture or something miserable has to happen to him, and he has to be really upset about it. And in this episode, as I was watching, I felt like this was an Ezri must suffer episode. And the reason I say that is because it was difficult for me to watch the Sisko scene with you. And when he got really tough with you and was like, you don't deserve to wear the uniform and all of that kind of talk. That was kind of tough. And you're a new cast member and you're getting talked to really roughly by people, like in a very kind of demeaning way, including by Garrick. And Garrick does the same thing in this episode. And it was hard for me to watch that because I was thinking, wow, she's like new and you guys are being so really tough on her. And and I felt really sad for your character, and I felt like Sisko was being too hard on you. Like he should have been a little bit softer, in my opinion, having that relationship. But what was that like, having to do that scene with Sisko where he really was like kind of like cold-blooded about it?
Well, on paper, when I read it, because it was my big episode, so I was reading it and rereading it and thinking about it. I got it. Like it was tough love in that moment. He'd already been kind. Come on, you can do it. Come on, old man. And so, if you got a kid or something, and they're like, I can't. Oh, it's so hard. I can't. And then you're like, okay, I've tried these other ways. I got to try this way. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah, why don't you quit? Yeah, why don't you quit?
Why don't you go to those pools and stir? Yeah, and you know what? Those pools where they have the symbiotes, I mean, that's pretty gross and awful down there. And so he needed to be that harsh. But then on the day, I mean, between Avery doing that and Andrew, I mean, that's what I was saying the last time we talked. Like, I was feeling good until we got to like these about being a new cast member. But then when Andy yells at me like that, but I was thinking, this is good. Use it. This is how you should feel anyway, right? So it really did make me cry. And then we had to later shoot the scene when I leave Garrick's, what do you call that, store, whatever, and come out in the hall, and then I have to go and cry. I was really crying, although it wasn't good enough for Les Landau. He didn't like the way I was crying.
Good old Les Landau.
Just give me one more. I know you can do it. I just a little bit.
And I was like, dude, I'm really crying. Okay, everybody's being really mean to me, including you now. And I'm actually really crying. So back off. And no, I remember thinking that. But I loved it when I was feeling a little beat up. I was like, okay, this is now making me think that fans might not like me. And it hadn't really occurred to me until that moment when I was shooting that, and Les Landau was yelling at me saying I wasn't crying right. And I was like, oh my God, people might not like this character.
Well, I was just going to say that, the way that you played it with that uncertainty, the choices you made of that uncertainty and that, sort of fear or questioning angle, what that to me is the big difference between fearlessness and bravery. And your character is like a 10 on bravery, because fearlessness would be to go in and have no second thoughts and say, this is the thing. And this is what bravery is, overcoming the difficulties and overcoming the fears. And what you did was your character came out there and was like, I don't know if this is the right thing, I don't know if I'm the right person to do it, but I'm just going to go out there. I don't even know if I know what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to overcome these fears. I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And those kind of things, on whether it's on television or in real life, those are the things that signify the biggest bravery. And so that was my takeaway from how you played the character. And I think how the character was written was that you have so many difficulties, with all these other things, but the one constant is that inner strength and that bravery to just push forward anyway.
That's right. And that is something, I think I've said it at conventions sometimes when you get into these conversations or talks with people, is exactly that, is that Ezri was very brave, because that was all very scary. And she did just want to run and leave, and she didn't. And that is incredibly brave, and just to know that,
There was a moment there when Garrick says to you, "You can't help me. You can't even help yourself.
Yes.
Now get out of here before I say something unkind."
Yes.
I was like, dude, you're already unkind. More unkind than this? Like, Jesus.
Garrick's a bad man.
That's what I mean. I was
so bad for you right there.
There's some acting there in not crying. You cut to me and I'm just on the verge, but I'm not. No, I'm not going to let this guy see me. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, because
Andrew Robbins kills the way he says
Andrew.
He kills that, by the way.
Oh my God. Yeah. That was brutal, but amazing at the same time. I always have this thing as an actor, like when it's like really awful, or, they can beat up in a moment, verbally or whatever. And I think this is so scary, just as an actor, but this is so awesome as well.
Yeah, it's so good. He's playing it so right that he's giving me. I don't have to act my emotions. I'm literally feeling it naturally because of how well he plays it.
That's right. Yeah.
But just the way he said it, he was so brutal about it. And one thing in Andrew Robinson's credit, I know, just to give him some extra praise on top of the one we've already given him. But when he switches from being out of that kind of rage state and he's in the doctor's room and he's just like, "Oh, I'm fine now. Thank you." Like he goes back to being just like, his switch is so amazing and it's visible.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, he's just an incredible actor. Yeah. And so it was such an honor to do that scene with him, and so fun and terrifying, but fun.
Well, this is really fun, and time flies very quickly. We only have one more minute before the end of the segment, and we know we've got you for the segment. We really appreciate you squeezing us into your very busy schedule. So before you run off, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
Just sort of that stuff that we talked about, that I think that this episode was a wonderful gift from the writers for myself, for Ezri, to really show who this character is. This is why we've gone this way in the casting. This is why we've gone this way in the writing, and not having another Jadzia. And I think that made sense from this episode, on. And
then the resolution between you and Worf. Like, to me, it was so awkward with you guys in the beginning. Now I feel like, okay, there's some kind of like terms of understanding, like we're gonna move forward. I love how you hit Quark with, is Worf here? And he's like, oh yeah, let me get out of here.
Oh yeah. I did think my line to Julian, where I was like, if it hadn't been Worf, it would have been you. I thought that was a little.
Yeah.
That was a little much.
I thought the same. I was like, whoa.
We're gonna talk about that in the second segment.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was kind of like interesting for you to bring up, because it's like saying basically you would finish second in the race, right? And it's like, that's the biggest carrot to dangle in front of a guy.
I know. I don't know what Ezri was playing out there, but it was kind of weird.
Bravery.
I know.
So
mental health.
Yeah. Anyway, well, Nikki, thank you so much for joining us. This is really cool. We really appreciate you taking the time. You're super busy. And
my
we
pleasure,
really love
guys.
having
So
you.
much fun to be with you. Thanks so much.
Love
It's been
it.
a pleasure.
Absolutely love
Great.
it. Great
And-
3-part introduction to your character.
Mhm. And 22 more episodes to go. So everybody at home, stick around. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Cirroc and I will be taking a break from our basketball talk to get back into Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 3, After Image. Everybody, we can't help it. We just basketball. Anyway, here are the trivioids for this week. Deep Space Nine is as familiar to Ezri as the back of her hand. No matter how many times you die, you never get used to it. Ezri Dax is left-handed. Why does everybody sound so surprised when they hear Ezri is a therapist? Quark owes Dax 10 strips of latinum from their last game of Tongo. For some reason, sewing seems to calm Garrick down. Captain Sisko can't resist saying, "I told you so." Garrick wants to go out into space to breathe better, I guess. Quark got a tympanic tickle from an amateur. The Destiny, the USS Destiny, is going to be joining the 7th Fleet at Calandra. Captain Raymer is getting one hell of a counselor, and all Odo does at dinner is sit there and count how many times Kira chews. Lots of fun ones there. That was weird about Garrick, where he's like, he's stressing out. I can't breathe. I'm caught. And then he's like, I know. I'll go out into space. That'll fix my breathing problem.
Yeah, there's plenty of air out there.
Oh,
yeah. Very good conversation with Nicole about Ezri's character and her kind of introduction into this 7th season, 3-part episode. And one of the things I wanted to kind of start with on the second segment is something that I didn't talk about with either of you is the name Ezri. And it kind of keeps jumping out at me, and we haven't had a discussion about it. We're 3 episodes into the 7th.
I think an Ezra.
Well, Ezri is a derived from a Hebrew verb, which translates to help, right?
Really?
Or my help, right? So she is actually, in thought, the name Ezri is help, is connected with the word of help. And as you can see in this first 3-part episode, she's kind of there to help transition from the end of Jadzia to the beginning of this new kind of dealing with her loss and also dealing with her kind of reemergence on the scene. So it is a Hebrew name. It is in the Old Testament. The oldest time you can find it is in Chronicles 27:26. So it is once again, just like all of the theme in Deep Space Nine, particularly, they use a lot of the biblical narratives and biblical themes to names, for example, to kind of project what sentiment they want the character to embody. Benjamin being a prophet, Joseph, his father, which is like Mary and Joseph of Jesus. It's
Jacob.
Even in Jacob, Sisko, even in the last episode that we saw, Image in the Sands or something of that nature, I think that's what it was called. Yeah. Even in that episode, in the first episode of season 7, they talked about Benjamin Sisko's mother being a woman named Sarah, which is also a biblical tie to Abraham and Sarah, right? So
Sarah is also a very cool Jefferson Starship song from the 80s, if you'll recall. I'm not going to sing it.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying from a biblical perspective, like they use the name Sarah, Joseph, Benjamin. These are very poignant and significant Old Testament names, and it's not an accident. And even Ezri is not an accident. And so we didn't discuss it, but the funny thing is when you do look it up, as you get into the Old Testament history of it and all of this meaning of to help and my help, the final thing comes down to Ezri Dax, fictional character from Star Trek.
No way.
So even Ezri Dax has made it into the lore of the name Ezri, which is kind of special to me too.
That's perfect. Well, that's cool. I always, when I think of her name, the one that I connect to is the 90s one-hit wonder, Better Than Ezra, if you've ever heard of them. Better Than Ezra.
No, I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
You know all the 90s bands. It's crazy. You must have been really like at the record store in the 90s.
And 70s.
You were at Amoeba and all of the record stores, Tower Record.
Yeah.
You were at Tower Record.
I was going to the Warehouse, I think it was.
The Warehouse videos. You were all through their 90s rock section.
Yeah, their hit song, I believe, was Good. It was, as in the song was called Good, not that it was good.
By the way, I did that same kind of deep diving into the hip hop music in the 90s. So I was so curious about listening to all of it and siphoning through it. But, one of the things we talked about with Nicole before we got back on again, was the use of pronouns, right? And gender pronouns. And, Deep Space Nine does so many things that, are way ahead of its time. And this episode, I'm sure, probably aired in 98, right? Somewhere in 98.
October 14th, 1998, I believe.
Okay. And so in 1998, this is over 24 years, going on 25 years ago. Yeah. This episode talked about gender pronouns and pronouns in general. And Ezri uses this phrase, we discussed it with Worf. No, they discussed it. Oh God, these pronouns are going to drive me crazy. And I just want, this is written by Renee Echeverria, Ira overseeing everything, and just the writing staff with Ron Moore and everybody that we've talked to, Robert Wolf. These guys are, the way they're thinking in 1990s about somebody who's had past lives in their hosting body, as a host and being a host for these different past lives and 300 years of living, and all of these kinds of concepts that they're really wrapping their heads around to a very a micro detailed degree. They're not just saying, oh yeah, this is a guy that shapeshifts. They're actually saying, this is a guy who shapeshifts, and these are the issues he's dealing with. This is a person who has a host, a biological host inside their body that is transferred. And these are the kinds of issues that they have to deal with. And to me, that's the kind of depth in character development that these writers do, because they don't just give you that and just walk away from it and say, okay, well, that's a person who has a trill inside them. And, you get it, right? It's more like, this is a person who has a trill inside them. These are the issues that they are faced with. These are the kinds of awkward situations they will be put in, dealing with their ex-husband and this and that and all of these past lives and friendships. And, are they guilty for a murder that happened in a past life? All of these kinds of crazy issues. And to me, that is what makes this writing so dramatic, so exceptional, is because they don't just give you something as a throwaway. They really dive deep into these issues and give you things like pronouns, being difficult to kind of get around and being able to grasp these kinds of concepts. So that's one of the things that I really give the writers credit for, seeing these concepts way ahead of their time.
Yeah, and it's a real knack to be able to not just come up with characters, not just to say, hey, how would this character, this strange character, or this character with a strange situation affect regular people, right? That's how most of us would think. But to your point, they're going beyond that and saying, what would it be like or feel like to that character? What would that character be going through? Not just, here's a character. Isn't this interesting? Isn't this weird? It's more interesting to see this character from their perspective, like what life is actually like. And to your point about pronouns, there was also another instance that was similar even before that. maybe it was called The Sword of Kalis. I think that maybe that was the episode in which the three Klingons come to visit Jadzia Dax, if you'll recall, Kor, Koloth, and Kang. And I think it was Kor, but I don't remember. But he comes up and he goes, she says, "Hey, it's me, Dax." And he goes, "Curzon." And he grabs Curzon. And she's like, "Well, it's Jadzia now." And he doesn't say, "What?" He goes, "Jadzia." And a lot of people found, a lot of, a lot of, evolution there. If it was a feeling of being evolved, for him to, for Star Trek to write a scene to where he didn't give a shit that she went from male to female or female to male. He was just happy to see his old friend. He made no problems about that. He was just happy to see his old buddy. And so that's kind of a similar thing in there that, I want to make sure doesn't go unnoticed, but that has been brought up in the past as well. I've seen that amongst the Star Trek groups, that there's that little meme in there, and it's a good one too, as is the one we saw today. It's just like, it probably didn't mean anything in the 90s, but looking back when we see it, something clicks, right? We go, wow, they had no idea that maybe that they were on to a little nugget of something there,
And to Deep Space Nine's credit, and ultimately Ira Bear and Rick Berman, one of the things they do in this episode, remember, there's not really much action in this episode. There's no shooting, there's no ships blowing up, there's no confrontation.
And I still loved it, right?
And I loved it, right? And they said, well, we're gonna deal with mental health. And we talked about this a little bit in the first segment, but they went to go deal with the issue of mental health. And one of the things that they dealt with in this particular episode was Garak. And Garak, having suffered this trauma early on in his life of being locked into a small space and having this claustrophobia, feeling like he's guilty because he's responsible for, or he some of his actions caused those results. So he feels like he's responsible, even though he doesn't see that he was abused and mistreated. And this is the kind of scenario that a lot of people who have been in abuse, whether it's sexual, whether it's physical, whether it's in a relationship with somebody, or it's in a vertical relationship like parent, child, or a pastor, follower, or boss, employee.
They always blame themselves. They always have that kind of guilt. Yeah.
Right. And that's the kind of trauma that Deep Space Nine chose to deal with in this episode. And I'm glad that they did, because it's the kind of things that are relevant and always will be relevant to people, because these are the kinds of mental health issues that we all deal with. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's life is laid out perfectly. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has to overcome things. Everybody maybe have seen something that they shouldn't have seen, or were exposed to something that was traumatic to them in their life. Not everybody, but there are people, groups of people out there that have been exposed to this kind of trauma, a level of trauma that is not easy to deal with. And so watching this episode was good, because they really went forward to tackle trauma and this kind of abuse that people have dealt with. And, one of the things they went through was these steps: blame, punish ourselves, let go, and misplaced guilt. These were the actual words used in this episode, right? We blame ourselves, we punish ourselves, we have to let go, and we have to understand that it's misplaced guilt. Like, we feel guilty for something that was actually
beyond our control.
Done to us, right? And so we're victims, but we feel guilty as victims. And I think those are really good concepts. They remind me of the kinds of issues that people who are in 12-step programs of recovery have to deal with. They remind me of all kinds of people that have to deal with issues of overcoming trauma in their life. So I'm glad that Renee, I don't know what his source of inspiration for this episode was, which would be great to know, and maybe a question for Ira in the future. What was Renee's source of inspiration for dealing with mental health in this kind of way?
Yeah, or a question for Renee, if we could ever get him on the show. I think it would be great to have him sometime, because he's written a lot of episodes and we've never had a good conversation with him. So that would be great. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I wonder if that was super collaborative, like if everybody in the room came up with these terms and with these ideas, and then Renee just wrote out the episode, or if they gave more general ideas and said, all right, you got this, Renee. Go do what you do well.
Yeah. Very beautiful things in this episode. I love the irritation that I think Garrett was masterful in this episode. I thought he was fantastic performance. I love when he told the guy, don't stand too close. I can't breathe. Like, get away from me. Like, he was all over that guy, and, feeling that heartbeat and all that stuff was crazy. And there were some shots that I really liked directorially from Les Landau, particularly the airlock, banging on the airlock door scene where they kind of panned out from the out exterior of the ship.
I was picturing that they're just outside on the stage. All the lights got to be off. I couldn't help but picture how they worked that and how they made it look so good.
Right. And it looked good, right? I mean, I thought I was outside watching Garrett trying to get out, bust his way out, and it felt good. They did a baseball on the desk scene for Sisko, which was kind of awesome. Just every time I see that baseball on the desk, there's a little level of comfort. Like, I know everything is okay.
Right.
Do you feel
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Because we've seen when things are not okay, that baseball is either not there or it's in the hands of an enemy.
Right. So when I saw that baseball, there's a level of comfort when it's resting in its little placeholder, sitting there nicely. Just, Sisko's walking behind the desk. He's like, yeah, I'll take your questions. And I told Nicole, I felt like Sisko was, that tough love is it's hard to watch tough love, right? I mean, parents have to do it all the time. They have to tell their kid, if you're not home by such and such time, then I'm going to lock the door and you have to sleep out on the street or find a place to go, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of tough love. Like, you don't want to see a kid sitting out on the street, sleeping on the balcony, but you also have to let them know that, I'm not accepting you just kind of making your own rules. There's rules that we're going to lay down, and I can see you making bad decisions. And then if you're going to continue on that path, I have to put consequences into effect. And to me, that's what Sisko was doing with Ezri in this episode, kind of like saying, okay, well, if you're going to be like this, I'm going to give you tough love. I'm going to put consequences into effect. I'm going to write your, letter of transfer. I'm getting you out of here. You don't belong here and wearing this uniform. But that was tough love, but it was hard to watch.
But Sisko was also, before that, he still showed some of that playfulness with Ezri in this episode, where it struck me again. I was like, Ezri is really the only character other than Jake that I've seen Sisko get playful with. And I'm like, that is such a great writing and acting choice for him to address her differently, because it's a different character. And because this character needs to be addressed differently. Jadzia was, sure, she was young, and sure, she was a little inexperienced, but she was still wise. She was still strong. Ezri had not gone through the preparation of getting the symbiont in her. So she was totally unprepared. This is not a situation that she's ready for. And so Sisko kind of handles her with kid gloves, then gives the tough love, but clearly he's got a vested interest in how he treats her. He's not just treating her like any other person. And it was really interesting to see him again be playful with her when she was, doing the headstand, and he's just kind of coming down and be like, what are you doing? I was like, this guy is so freaking cute the way he talks to her.
Yeah. My favorite thing, Avery Brooks is an exceptional actor. And what he does is he layers his performance in very subtle ways. he makes very subtle choices that are not, people get accused of overacting a lot of the times. And they kind of, when they want to be mad, they're really mad. And when they want to be happy, they're overly happy. But he's very good at being subtle and kind of leaving you guessing. And one of the things that I really enjoyed that he did in this performance, in this episode, was when he had a scene with Nicole playing Ezri, of course, and she said to him, Worf is intimidated by you. And he did a whole little laugh, and it lasted about 5 to 10 seconds. And he's like, and he just did this whole like performance out of, I intimidate Worf, right? Like this guy who's like a Klingon ass kicker. He was so tickled by that, right? Yeah. And but we as the audience, I felt like that was obvious this whole time, right? There were moments when I pointed this out in other reviews we did where I was like, boy, Sisko, when he wants to get tough on Worf, he gets on his ass and makes him feel this big, right? And so when he hears it back, which is hilarious because that kind of like reminds me of really a real life kind of military hierarchy situation where it's like, oh, this guy is afraid of me. Like, it's like, he's the toughest guy, out there. But because I am the ranking guy and because I don't play any games, he's intimidated by it. But it makes him laugh. And I think that's kind of a real military thing. It's like, there might be a guy out there who's, looks like Schwarzenegger, but there's a guy who's not like him that he's intimidated by.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that he has experience, because he has the knowledge, because he has the wisdom, because he has the authority in his voice, and he commands that kind of presence. And I just feel like that Avery being light and laughing in that moment with Ezri, I thought was fantastic. And I loved the way he performed that moment.
It'd be funny if Worf is like to Ezri, Captain Sisko intimidates me. And then Ezri's like, what? He's an old softie. He's a little teddy bear. And they'd be like, we're talking to two different people here. This is two different Siskos.
And, Nicole mentioned too, also the fact that she thought it was kind of strange that she would tell Bashir that you were like runner up in the Miss America pageant,
Yeah, I was like,
just don't say that. That's kind of a lead on. It's kind of like, it's not paying the like for her knowledge base and her wisdom of 300 years and 10 lifetimes or whatever it is. She would not disrespect Jadzia's relationship with Worf by saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It also in a way kind of negates the funny line she had before that, which is she says, Julian, don't flirt with me. I was rolling when she said that. But then afterwards, she turned around. She's like, you were her second favorite, which is basically without her realizing it, maybe, or with her realizing it. She's kind of saying, she's going like this. She's going, no, stop flirting. Don't do, She's kind of like, don't flirt anymore, but give me a little bit more, like keep it coming.
Yeah.
You still got to,
and that's what I get out of it. And then the fact that, I just think it's too early for that, having given the fact she hasn't resolved with Worf yet. I think if, just as a instinct, you would resolve something with Worf, you would say, hey, look, let's close this out and close out the tab. Let me get a check.
Right.
And then I would say something like that to Bashir if I was available and clear and I've cleared the slate. But having unresolved issues that major, where the guy just saw his wife die and then he sees a reincarnation of her, he would have to have some closure, and she would have to be aware of giving him that closure before laying a hint down like that to Bashir.
Yeah, that's exactly it, is that her symbiont still being in somebody that shares her name almost takes away his closure. It's got to be really hard to have that closure if part of that person is still alive, standing right in front of you and using the same last name. And that's why when she goes, "Hello, Worf," and he goes, "Ensign," that was great. And then she says, "Don't you want to talk to me?" or whatever. He says, "You are not Jadzia. Jadzia died and went to Stovokor. I don't know you, nor do I wish to know you." I was like, damn, this guy just chopped her up. We do only have a couple minutes left here.
Yeah, he says that, but then he wants to fight everybody who talks to her.
Yes.
Like, you can't do it both ways, bro.
Yeah, we've all been there. We've all been there. We're like, no, I don't want to talk. You better not talk to her. You better. You know what I mean? Like, we've all been there before.
I don't know you. And then he's like, "Yo, if you talk to my girl, bro, swear to God."
That was Worf acting very human. I do want to point out real quick that we had a couple, it's been a while, but we had a couple Trekkian names. We had Idanian Spice Pudding and Finalian Toddies Hot. When, Julian was going to. Yeah. But yeah, we'll talk a bit more about this. We still got a lot more to toss around, so we will do that on the free-for-all when we come right back. But before we do that, let us make sure to give a very special thanks to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon, Carmen, aka Skillet, Tim Baum, aka Grandpa One, aka Bubbles One, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, the whisper one, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Anna Post, Erica Strom, Joe Balsarotti, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. Polat, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, DQ, Neil Akasaka, Justine Norton Kurtzen, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Everybody stick around for the free-for-all, and we will be right back on the seventh rule.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the seventh rule. Today, we are joined by Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Ryan, don't forget the T, Husk.
Hell yeah.
Don't forget it.
Yeah.
We have Grandpa One, who occasionally is also known as Bubbles, with or without the one. Dr. Sue Gruner, if you have a bug, she wants to know. Mike Gu is in a car in Los Angeles. Someone else may be joining him shortly. We hope so, but 2 for 1. Awesome. Hello, Mike. Good to see you. And bringing the smiles, Malisa Longo.
Hi. How's it going?
And then out in England, let's call it Wales, we have Eve England.
Hello.
Okay, if we have questions about reptiles later, we have Dr. Mohamed Noor.
Oh,
Well, all right. And GDS Goldu Scott Jensen.
good evening.
And then we have an uncle to be, present day uncle TJ Jackson-Bey. Nicely done. Tierney C. Dieckmann, the board queen, is in the house. Welcome, Tierney. And I'm Homer Frizzell. Okay, Ryan, over to you.
Actually, that guy behind you, Homer, kind of looks like me from behind.
Oh, yeah.
The little gold neck.
It does.
Just noticed that.
Don't know who that is.
All right. So, okay, we've got a lot to talk about today. First of all, did you guys catch all the NAMs besides the 4 different DAX hosts? I caught 2. Did you guys get any?
No.
In addition to Jadzia, I got 1.
Jadzia.
Well, yeah. And I also got Garrick's dad.
Yes, yes, A+. Also, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
No. Man, I haven't looked.
Can't hear you, Cirroc.
Goes also on
Oh, sorry. I'm going to go down the middle with my 7.5. Can you hear me?
Yep.
7.5 is my guess on this one.
Nobody
I liked
tell
it.
him that's not the middle.
That's not the middle. I like that. 7.5, 7.7 in that range, but I would say 7.7. I'm guessing the audience says 7.5.
Anybody have any guesses?
I think it'll be lower.
Must be higher than that. That sucks.
I think it'll be lower. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I agree too.
Oh, boy.
Oh, Grandpa one.
The problem is DS9 has set such a high standard for itself. So it's like,
Well
It
said.
does.
because it has such a high bar, it's like it's
Yep.
hard to keep reaching that bar over and over again.
Mhm.
Right. And it is actually a 7.2 on IMDb, which you're right. Most shows would be like, yes.
That means I guessed it correctly again. I didn't even look at the IMDb to
See,
research
you
this
should have
one.
said it.
I did say.
Hey, who's
Oh.
going to win these basketball games coming up? Who's going to?
Mhm.
Warriors or
I'm gonna stop guessing. People are gonna think I'm cheating. It's not.
I think that's it. All right. So Tim Baum is here, everybody. Tim, have you seen this episode recently? And if so, how much fun was it watching Ezri Dax getting reintegrated or integrated for the first time into Deep Space Nine?
I think I saw it about 3 weeks ago. I did not watch it today. I thought it was a great episode. One of my favorite scenes is when Ezri goes in the back way to Commander's office, and she said, Worf's in pain. It's like, how do you know? It's like, I was his wife.
Yeah.
And I thought that was delivered almost perfectly. The other scene, and I may be mistaken if it was in this episode, but where Worf confronted Bashir, threw him up against the wall.
Mhm.
We already know Worf's career is over because of he's never going to get promoted. And then he assaulted a fellow officer. If I were Bashir, I'm like, dude, back off. I'm reporting you. Then there was I guess the scene in Course where it's like, don't flirt with me. I can't handle it. But no, those are the things that stood out with this episode. But the whole interaction between her and Worf, or lack thereof, because he was going through, it's like, is she dead? Is she not dead? Is she dead? Is she not dead? How do I handle this? But I thought Nikki did a great job just for coming into this show after 6 years. And so there you go.
Hey, Tim, real quick, what did you think about the scene where Sisko gets tough on Ezri and basically says, you're not even worthy to wear the uniform? Did that resonate with you? Did that bode as something that you related to as real? Did you feel like that was something authentic in this situation?
Oh, definitely, it was authentic, especially when a commanding officer sees something in somebody, and you can try coaching, and it's like sometimes you got to suck it up. You can do it. I've had commanding officers that do that where they really didn't care about you, but being an adult, you can tell. But it was tough love, and I thought it was a great way, because it was very realistic as far as junior officers and commanding officer. They're not going to spend the time dressing you down unless they think you've got potential. And the way Sisko took care of this is like, okay, you want to quit? Fine, see ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. But the way he brought it around was very good. So it was realistic.
All right. Dr. Susan V. Gruner, there's nothing you hate more than realistic stuff. But what did you think of this episode?
It was a great episode. I don't like that rating at all. I thought everything that Tim said was like he was reading my mind. I thought the only thing I wrote down is, why is Worf so mean to Ezri in the beginning? I don't think that was appropriate for him to be so cruel to her. And I do understand that it was confusing for him in some ways to look at her and realize she has Jadzia's memories, but I thought he was kind of mean to her in the beginning. But otherwise, I thought it was well done. I know every single episode now, I noticed the carpeting and the lighting and things like that I never really paid attention to when I first started. And I love the lighting. I loved Garrick's uniform, or whatever you want to call it. His suit. It was just unbelievable. Where did they get that fabric? It's just amazing to me. The whole episode was great and deserves like an 8.7.
Sue, I would love to see you in a Garrick outfit. Awesome.
There's a one of the episodes, that they left it when Garrick is shortening or hemming pants, and I don't know what you call it. It's a mistake where he says, Quark says, I need a meter. It's a meter too long or a meter too short. Well, a meter is 3 feet. And they left it. He meant to, I forget what episode that was, but I was hoping it was this one. But yeah, no, the fabric that they use for the Ferengi are fabulous. Well, for even the tie, when he was hanging that dress up when he was talking to Ezri, even the fabric of that tie was cool, that scarf or whatever it was. Yeah, I loved it. And I did.
I was going to say, would you guys rather see Sue in a Garrick outfit or a Ferengi outfit?
Ferengi.
Ferengi.
The answer is yes. Just
Yeah, you're.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.
One day and one the other day.
You got your marching orders, Sue.
Fabric looks heavy.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's really like stuff that we make a couch out of or something like that. But yeah, no, I thought it was a great episode. And I did think what I was going to say was how hard it must have been for Nicole. How do you pronounce her last name? De Boer? Or her to start in with that group that had been together for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she did such a great job. She was so believable. I just loved her from the minute she opened her mouth. I just adored her.
Mm-hmm. She was telling us earlier that Armin was very welcoming. Everybody was great, of course, but she said that, he's one of those guys that kind of goes out of their way to make sure everybody feels welcome. Speaking of somebody that makes everybody feel welcome, Mike Goo is in his car making everybody feel welcome right now. Have you seen this episode recently? And if so, what'd you think?
I have. I watched it yesterday afternoon, and yeah, I loved it. Everything, yeah, like Sue said, both guests have essentially read my mind and said everything. I also loved just the fact that kind of like the new Strange New Worlds episode, that it's about psychotherapy and counseling, and that there's this analogy that she draws with her own issues with space sickness and the other Dax, and then the claustrophobia and Garrick being locked in that closet or willingly locked in that closet. That whole thing is fascinating to me, and continues the pattern of DS9 looking at these issues that are very deep and resonant. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the episode where Garrick first showed his claustrophobia when he was in that tight, cramped space and the Breen was there? What episode was that?
Wasn't that when they were in the prison, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, but I don't remember.
First real more talk.
Yeah.
Is it In Purgatory's Shadow? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the two It's one of those two is called In Purgatory Shadow. I think you're right.
By Inferno's Light and Purgatory Shadow.
There it is. All right. So everybody stick around. Mike Gu may have a second visitor with him. So we'll see how that goes. Melissa Longo, no visitors allowed except for the cat, who just gets pissed if anybody shows up and takes her limelight. What do you think of this episode?
I really like this episode. I think it's a realistic portrayal of this person who is familiar with the surroundings, but is still a stranger to the surroundings. So it would be a confusing time for her, not only for her, but everyone in the crew. And I think the way that they each deal with their feelings about it is different. And that's believable too. And how they approach Ezri is different from each other. And it would be confusing for Worf because he believes that Jadzia is in Sto-vo-kor, but how is she in Sto-vo-kor if she's still part of Ezri? So it would be confusing for him, but I also think that he is a bit hard on her, but grief, wreaks havoc on people in different ways. So he gets kind of a pass, but I love when O'Brien comes into his quarters with the bottle of blood wine and Worf goes, "Oh no, not again."
Oh, and how cool was it when Worf swung his batleth and hit that little pot? What kind of aim is that? That was amazing.
I know. And I liked the interaction with Ezri and Bashir, and I liked Bashir's reactions to what Ezri told him. If Worf hadn't come along, it would have been you, and you could see the pain in his eyes, and that was it was a hard thing to hear. It's so, and I really believed that moment, and I felt for him so much. And it's interesting that Ryan brought up Armin being, so welcoming and the welcome wagon, and it's interesting because he is kind of the community leader. Yeah. From the first episode, community leader. And I had to note his scream, Quark's scream.
Right, we didn't cover that, where they pulled that weird junk out of his ear.
It's a feather.
Oh, it's just a feather?
For a tympanic tickler, or a tympanic tickler or something.
Yeah, tympanic tickler.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't get it done by an amateur."
Yeah, that's what I was remember. It's like amateurs.
Yeah.
Well.
And Garak was amazing, of course.
Oh yeah. Well, now speaking of which, when I saw I didn't even notice that was a feather. When he pulled that out, I thought that was just what the British call crisps, right, Eve England? Wow, Homer hated that. He is just livid
That was
right now.
pretty bad, Brian, even for you.
There are like 4 people shaking their heads right now.
Yeah. Well, Eve, what did you think of the crisps or the episode?
Yeah, because I think it's a really strange episode, because on the one hand, the way it's all structured and the sort of the overarching story with the counseling and putting Ezri and Garak together, kind of when you're first watching it and you think, oh, this is a little bit contrived and it's not particularly believable in terms of the way that she necessarily deals with that, and you think, would she as a counselor sort of do things in this way? But as a whole, I still really love this episode, because I think that mechanism, no matter how you think it's a little bit strange the way they set it up, it actually does what it was intended to do absolutely perfectly, in that it gives that opportunity for Ezri to be fully integrated with the established ensemble of crew. And what I particularly love about it is how you just have, which is quite unusual, especially in more recent episodes, is you just have so many different one-on-one conversations between different combinations of characters, which was just so refreshing, and kept it really pacey. We obviously had that amazing heartbreaking scene with Bashir that Melissa just mentioned, but with Garak, I just thought it was just incredible because we have this, he's usually got this veil of civility about him, and we just see that completely disappear in this episode, and he is so callous and absolutely vicious to Ezri, and I was quite shocked watching that, and it was just interesting to sort of see from that dialogue and the way that he behaves with Ezri there, you really get that sense of the trauma that he's going through, and how he really is trying to consolidate with what he's doing and his people, basically. So I just think the opportunity and all of those conversations that all of these different characters have with each other just really allows them, it allows us as the cast, as the sort of observers of all of this, to really almost clear the air in terms of what we have to go through and process with Jadzia going. And I think what the end result of that is at the end of this episode is just as if Ezri's just always been there. And as a whole, that means that the episode is just incredibly successful, because it just does, in that one episode just means that, okay, Ezri's here, everybody loves her, she's fit in, and we can kind of move on with the rest of the last season, basically. So I just thought as a whole it was just really well done, and all the attention to detail that Sue mentioned was just really fascinating to see, because you got to see lots of different parts of the station and lots of different people interacting, which is fab.
Yeah, Garrick would call her integration seamless. Did you guys notice Eve's? I just saw. Sorry, Tim. Tim fully disappeared with that. Did you guys notice Eve's poster on the wall there? I hadn't noticed that until just now.
The seventh rule?
Yeah.
Just
cool.
put that up.
Oh, yeah.
Finally got it framed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was admiring your droid, and then I just looked up and I was like, oh, we should be admiring that. That was a creation by JJ Lendl. Everybody check him out, jjlendl.com. Excellent art there. Dr. Mohamed Noor is also here. He's a great artist. What do you think of this
I'm a
episode?
terrible artist.
Same, dude, same.
Art is subjective.
Yeah, there you go. So I mean, I enjoyed the episode overall. I think Sue said it first, but Melissa reiterated too. I found so many of Ezra's reactions very believable. Where it's like, I could see that confusion. How do you deal with it? And even at first, I was a little bit skeptical about her wanting to stay. But if you think back earlier with Jadzia, she was, willing to basically get together with one of her old flames too. So basically, there's already some hint of rejection with Dax to the sort of cultural stigma to, continuing relationships. So I thought that was good. In terms of the funniest scene, I loved how much Sisko loved that Worf found him intimidating. That he just got this after that. So
yeah.
that was
Awesome.
It was a callback and everything. He loved it.
Oh, the most confusing part I got, but it took me until the next day. So I watched it earlier this week. But the next day I was like, oh, that's why. When Quark handed that plate to Ezri and she said something like, have you seen Worf? And he said, oh, I don't know. And he snatched it back. It's like, why did he take it back? But it occurred to me oh, it's because he was worried Worf was going to beat him up. And it didn't click me with me watching it. I had to think of that the next day.
Yeah.
But overall, I thought it was really good. And actually, I thought the camera work was really good. Like with her walking around the promenade, the camera work was quite good. So it was just, I enjoyed it overall.
Cirroc was Les Landau the kind of director that really focused on camera work and shots, or was he more of focusing on performances?
He did a lot of shot setups. He liked the moving camera on a rig. A lot of that's kind of one shot. That was one of Avery Brooks's favorites as well. Just he liked to get things done in one. And that was the thing with the self-sealing stumbled episode scene. He wanted to do that in one shot. So a lot of people try to do things in coverage, and that means you have to reset the lights and reset all the background to make sure that your angles are right and whatnot. And if you can get stuff done in one shot, one master shot, which covers all of everybody's lines and and you can move the camera around. Some directors prefer to do that as opposed to cut, and now let's move the camera this way and get this way, and then cut, and let's get it again this way, because that kind of can stretch out a scene. But if you can get the most of it in a master shot and just kind of going for close-ups, or get all of it in one shot, which Avery likes to do. Avery likes to get the whole thing in one shot. So he's like,
so does Eminem.
Start on the right. All he gives in one shot.
Just made me think of something else too.
So yeah, so like Avery, when he did Far Beyond the Stars, and the scene where he's coming out of the apartment and there's a drawing in his hand and it falls and then the guy steps on it. If you look at that whole shot, it starts close, gets back, and then it goes close again. It's kind of done in this kind of one shot motion to get as much as you can out of it. So yeah, so those are the kinds of directorial choices. But yeah, I think Les Landau did a good job. To your point, I like the scene where Garrick was at the airlock trying to bang. And I actually I like the pullback scene out of that shot. There were a few moments where I thought he made some good choices.
Great extra insights. Thanks, Mo.
No,
yeah,
I wasn't the only one trying to bang.
Yeah, can I add something that I wrote down in that scene where they make Ezri a lieutenant? I wrote down Jake is taller than anybody else in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I finally did it. I got the award for the tallest guy.
You're like a foot taller than everybody. You know, I was thinking in that scene, why isn't Nog there?
I was thinking the same thing, because they did have one Ferengi walk by and I was like, is that Nog? And I was like, no, that's the other bartender guy who works at the bar, but wasn't Nog.
Yeah, what's his name? It's like Break. I think you're right. Broik.
He was a nice guy, by the way.
Broik.
He was a background actor, and he was a very nice guy. Always was there, worked late nights with us. And those are the kinds of people that are unsung heroes that are in the trenches with you on the day-to-day basis, who really never get the kind of credit that they deserve. So that guy put in a lot of work too, just being the background waiter. Because he had to get into Ferengi makeup, maybe not just as long, but pretty much just as long.
You know, another guy that is pretty much a foot taller than everybody is Galdu Scott, everybody. So he feels you. He feels you there, Cirroc. Yeah.
100%.
How'd you feel about this episode? You probably loved it, right?
I did love it. I loved it a lot because it was almost all character development, pretty much. My like Mohamed had said about that smirk on Sisko's face when he had found out that he intimidates Worf. It's good to see Sisko laughing too, because there's so much heavy all the time, and for him to take such joy from that, which is perfect too. But I did feel, and as well as I want to echo a couple other folks, with Ezri coming in and feeling like she's already established, and I didn't know if maybe that's because we'd heard so much about her being pre-joined, so we had a little bit more of Ezri Tegan than just Ezri Dax. And I feel like maybe that might have had a little bit helping out with it there. But man, she came in and hit the ground running with everybody that has known these characters for so long, and I thought fit in so seamlessly. But particularly with the Garrick stuff, because Garrick has done a lot of like absolutely terrible things, but I think making Ezri cry was probably the worst that I'd ever seen, because you could just see her holding it, just keeping it in, and then as soon as she gets out of sight, she just breaks like that. And then back around into the party at the end, I thought it was great that he came over and he was like, gotta kind of say I'm sorry to her. And the first thing that she says is, I hope it's not too crowded in here for you. Not thank you, not any of this other stuff, not any of the, immediately she was compassionate towards him. And I think that also made her character that much more likable, and you want to accept her even more, is that right away, the first thing out of her mouth was that. So yeah, I definitely, I think that 7-2 was a little low as well. So I'm with Sue. Let's go 10.
We can fix that. Dikembe Mutombo was 7-2, everybody. They deserve better.
Oh, Stephanie.
Oh, no, I'm not in my house.
Homer Frizzell, he's here because he introduced everybody. How do you feel about this episode? Wearing a cool
Enjoyed it.
Captain Nog Forever shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
Yay.
It was fun. There are a couple things I would have been interested to see how they could have been done differently. One of them would require an entire rework of Cardassians. And the other one is like, I would have liked to have seen Worf maybe get called on pushing Bashir up against the wall, and the genetically modified guy kicks his ass. He can't keep doing that kind of stuff. But speaking regarding Cardassians and reptiles, I know that they're cold-blooded reptiles, that is, and so they don't sweat. And I'm just curious if there's been an alien race in Star Trek where they're actually truly reptilian and they're characters that can speak, and they show the kinds of things that we got to see from Garak, or how it would be done. So in the very beginning scene, you know, we're getting this claustrophobic thing. He's at Quark's. We have this people around him. But if I'm O'Brien or Bashir, especially sitting at this table with him, he does not look well. I mean, he's sweating bullets, and you're like, they should say, are you okay? But it's for our benefit. So I'm just curious if how that would be done. It's kind of like, hey, turn down the heat in here and I'm good. Yeah.
Which
that was a confusing nitpick.
Odd.
Yes, it's a confusing nitpick. So reptilian, but more mammalian than not.
Mm-hmm.
This is a sweat glands question for Mohamed.
That's right.
That's why Mohamed showed himself out. He's like, I don't want the sweat.
I don't know
talk.
where this guy, Mr. Frizzell, is going, but I want no part of it. Okay, that's fine.
No,
it was a lot of fun. I did also, as people have said, I enjoyed the Sisko scene with Ezri about Worf, and then also, I mean, Andy Robinson just bringing it, and Nicole like right there toe to toe, and that was so powerful.
Yeah.
What do you think Cardassian toes look like besides gray?
Yeah, we know. I don't know. They don't sweat, or maybe they do.
Like that.
Oh.
Like talons.
TJ Jackson-Bey has a really cool background with Nikki behind him. How you doing? How much did you love this episode?
I love it a lot. And I watched it. I think I watched it earlier today, and I liked it a lot more than I ever have before. And I mean, I always liked it, but I really love this episode now because we get to see, Garak kind of go on this journey and just kind of come to grips with where he is in the stream of history, in relation to his people. The first thing I have to call out, kind of like Homer and a few others have mentioned, is Andy Robinson and Nicole de Boer's performances were top notch in this episode, and it just amazing to watch both of them go on their journeys as they kind of interact with each other. The range of emotions that they showed was incredible. And so I enjoyed their performances very much, but I also enjoyed, the theme of the episode of, both of them just kind of finding, who they are. I think Garak, I think Eve mentioned before, this kind of a little bit out of character from what we see from Garak. Like, we know he's not quote unquote a good guy, but we've actually seen him like this before. In The Wire, he kind of had this kind of reaction when Bashir is trying to help him also. I'm not sure what that's about. Someone sent a TMI note. I don't know what the TMI is. Anywho, so it's not the first time we've seen, Garak behave this way towards somebody that's trying to help him. But I think, some things that we can take away immediately from Ezri Dax's character is even after that, after she breaks down and cries and she goes into the temple and cries there too some more, she comes back. She goes back to him, and no one had to make her do that, and she didn't have to do that. But she goes back to him and kind of stands in front of him again. I mean, how many of us would go back to somebody that made us feel, that small and that bad, without somebody, pushing us to do that? So that, that kind of tells us right off the bat that, she has, what it takes to get herself together and get the job done. And not only that, she has Jadzia's memory, so she knows who Garrick is, and she goes in the first place. And so that tells us that, she's showing this, timidity and an unsurety about herself, but she's not afraid to go and stand toe to toe, with an uncomfortable situation. So, kudos to her character, kudos to the acting, and I just want to also call out that this is the second time that I think Jake Sisko has commented on how cute she is.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 out of 2 episodes.
I noticed that.
So we're hoping next episode keep this streak alive.
Yeah. Jake likes that. She's cute.
Can you imagine how awkward it would be for Ben Sisko to be the
oh yeah.
That would be.
He could be the best man at the old man wedding.
So Jake's basically like, get out of the way, Kira. There's a new flame in town here.
Well, Tierney C. Dieckmann also has the wisdom of 9 lives behind her. How much did you enjoy this episode?
Oh, thoroughly. It's a little clunky in parts, but for good reason, given everything we've just gone through, and essentially a 3-parter from the end of last season to the 2-parter this season, and introducing a new Dax. They threw Nicole de Boer into this role. And it could have possibly been done a little bit more delicately, but given how they had 6 seasons to introduce us to Jadzia and build her character from the ground up subtly, and Dax, they did a pretty damn good job. But given everything that everyone else has said, everything from, when I guessed at IMDb at 7.2, if I'm going to guess out loud, I'm usually going to go low, just because it's always going to be lower than we hope it is.
Especially Sue.
Well, yeah, we're always going to want to 10 it, but I expected it to actually be more like a 7.4, even 5 or 6, given that it's so important for Ezri, and it's a good Garrick episode. This is Garrick, and I love a Garrick episode, and I like seeing episodes of any show that smartly delve into character flaws, because that builds the realism of any character. No person is just black or white. Again, this is good about DS9 character building. But given everybody's saying how the acting is so top notch and character choices, etc., given if we're really going to go deep into lore, there are some choices that were strange to me, with Ezri's character supposedly so close to the end of her training as a Starfleet counselor that they're willing to waive the end of it and just promote her not only to lieutenant, but the end of her medical training, which I can't see her just getting a field commission like that. That is very unbelievable to me, but again, it's sci-fi. But if she has previous Jadzia knowledge of Garrick, when she goes in and speaks to him the first time, the first time I remember seeing this episode on an adult watch through, I thought she was almost being patronizing or kidding in a way when she starts to, I guess, psychoanalyze him of his claustrophobia. It seems like a bit of an odd performance, and about her space sickness in turn as she's assessing herself at the same time. It comes off from a psychological standpoint, as in psychology, like she's almost very inexperienced in any sort of patient dealings, more than anything. To me, it seems like an awkward approach to someone who should have knowledge of Garrick, who should have years of training. I would hope they're giving them years of training as counselors, especially if she's taking over for an entire station. I mean, at least Bashir has a whole staff. There's some odd choices, but it's a really good representation of she's dealing with how many personalities she's thrown into, just having a big old worm thrown into her belly. I mean, I think that seems like a much better explanation for why she's getting space sick, is a physiological symptom rather than psychological. Whereas, Garrick's having a physiological symptom from a, ultimately maybe psychological cause with his claustrophobia and panic attacks. There's a great representation of panic attacks here with him in the bar, closing it in. You see it from an outside perspective. You see him exhibiting kind of sweatiness, uncomfortableness. Everybody's closing in around him. And then in his shop, you hear kind of the ringing of the ears, the heartbeat getting louder, where when you're having an actual panic attack, things shut off from around you. Like, there's some great aspects here of performance, but some things just seem very strange. As an experienced counselor, she'd already just taken a leave of absence to figure out what the heck's going on with her life. She'd gone to Trill to figure this out, and Trill is probably up in arms right now dealing with their own crisis, because I would think if they're willing to put Dax, the Dax symbiont, into an ensign on a starship just to save its life, Trill has probably figured out that, many more of its population can be joined after the episode, what happened with Jadzia and Duran.
Yeah.
So they're probably dealing with a lot of their own upheaval, trying to figure this out, maybe trying to help scandals from breaking out. They've probably done all they can for her. She can't get any more help. I would think that with something as important as this with Garrick, as a counselor, she would probably recuse herself. She would step aside and say, I'm not for this, but because of who she is, where she is, she's going to do this. So she's dealing with this. She's dealing with Worf, who is, he kind of gets a pass. Grief. If you try to empathize with that situation, even though he's thinking with his ridges the whole time through this bruteness that he's got going on. And yes, the first thing is he assaults a fellow officer. No, he's done. Bashir should go right to Sisko. There's so much stress happening, but overall, it's a great way to just kind of fall in love with Ezri and get that, yeah, she is still Dax. She's still gonna have Dax in there with all of these other personalities that you do know about. And she is a different Dax, a very different Dax. She is young, she is unsure of herself. She has these severe mood swings because of how the hell many personalities. I mean, I find it extremely easy to relate to her, because how does one find their personality when you're born someone different, taught to be someone completely different, and then your whole life changes out of nowhere that you didn't expect, you probably didn't even want, or you may have wanted, but you didn't know how to deal with it. And then it happens yet again, and it's so much more than you could ever imagine. And not only that, but she's a foot shorter than she was before, and in a completely different situation. And she's dealing with grief of her own. Like, that's a hell. So we go just right into the season with a new Dax, and Nicole de Boer does a wonderful job with it, as does Andy Robinson. I mean, you can't not love him. So between the two of them, yeah, it's a darn good episode when it all comes down to it, even with some ridiculous, inexcusable Worf behavior, but he seems to just kind of get away with whatever he wants because he's Worf. And
well, you know what? Apparently, one of the end of that scene that was cut out was afterwards. Worf whispered into Bashir's ear and said, "Snitches get stitches." So that's kind of like that's why he got he got away with it.
I would love to have seen Bashir just take him down.
Yeah, but that's Worf.
You know, they've been in trouble before from the Bar Association, if you remember, between Bashir, O'Brien, and Worf. So I think that's why he just sends O'Brien to handle it instead of going to like, we got him.
Yeah, and I think Bashir is smart enough to realize that Worf is grieving, and this is a huge, wrench in his life to have this person that he sent off to Stovokor back in his life again, and that's confusing.
Speaking of back in his life again, everybody, Dr. Stephanie Baker has joined Mike Gu in his car. Welcome, Stephanie, to LA. Do you know, have you seen this episode recently?
Yes.
What a relief. What'd you think of it?
I liked it. I just, I missed most of what you all said. I'm sorry I was late. I'm on a plane. But when I first watched it, and then in the rewatch, I just remember that Ezri seemed kind of lost and a little disoriented from episode 1 and episode 2. And I was impressed how she was successful as a counselor with Garak, with her almost unconventional approach to his panic attacks, taking him to the holosuite. And I had a lot of admiration for her at that point, where I wasn't sure about her before that. That's it.
And again, welcome to LA.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoy your stay.
We're in your town.
Yeah. So, Cirroc, any final thoughts before we go?
Number one, I thought Worf was acting way too jealous about somebody who's not even alive anymore. Like, if your girl's alive, then you can pull the Will Smith and slap somebody for keep my girl. But she's not even around anymore, and he wants to slap somebody. So I thought that was kind of weird. The other thing is, I thought it was funny that Garak's whole life he had been locked in the closet and trying to get out of the closet. And it reminds me of Andrew Robinson talking about his character being a closeted kind of character. So that's an interesting wordplay that they use there. And then lastly, I will say it again. They dealt with gender pronouns in this episode. When they talked about they discussed it, we discussed it, I discussed it. Ezri mentions that in this episode. And I just think that's way ahead of its time as far as dealing and addressing the difficulty with properly addressing gender pronouns. And I thought that was just a brilliant, small, subtle insert in this episode, but also very insightful for the writers to be able to see that kind of vision and be able to look into the details of that kind of language and the difficulty of trying to express yourself in those kinds of ways. So I think I give credit to the writers for even addressing that topic at a time 25 years ago when it wasn't even an issue.
So before we go, everybody, Homer said, good knowledge, maybe TMI, when Mike Gu answered the question as to what Cardassian feet look like. The question is, should we show it to the rest of the audience in the world? Mike Gu is vehemently saying yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yes. feet are disgusting, but I still want to see it.
Okay.
Like this video before it and make sure the video's already liked.
So it's like this video, and that way
Right.
we know, and 5 stars, and put in the reviews and the ratings and all that ahead of time. This is what Cardassian feet look like, everybody.
It's interesting.
That's the word.
So
Lots of knuckles. Lots of
I think Tierney was the closest. That was close to her guess.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting.
No.
Steel-toed
Anyway,
boots, I guess. I don't know.
How come no one's noting the cloacas, but they're all going "Yee," about feet?
yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, that's.
We're gonna have to move on. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sue, Stephanie, Mike, Melissa, Eve, Goldu Scott. Oh, actually, Goldu Scott, you could have just told us what you look like. Now we know what you look like.
Oh man, the secret's out.
Homer, TJ, Tierney, and Grandpa One. Thank you, everybody at home, for joining us. For Cirroc, myself, and Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. And always remember the 7th rule.